A New Treasury of Curious George. Let's see. This book belongs to Isabella Grace Rogers. With love, Mama and Papa, January 2009. Let's see. The New Adventures of Curious George. Isabella, today, why don't we read, well, we could read any of them, but why don't we read Curious George and the Birthday Surprise, page 73. Page 73, let's see. Curious George and the Birthday Surprise, in the style of H.A. Ray by Martha Weston. This is George. George is a good little monkey, and always very curious. Today is a special day. The man with the yellow hat told George at breakfast, "I have a surprise planned and lots to do to get ready," he said. "You can help me by staying out of trouble." George was happy to help. Later, while George was looking out the window and being very good, he heard some tinkly music. It was coming from a little white truck. It was an ice cream truck. George watched as a whole line of children and their dogs lined up to enjoy some ice cream treats. It looked like fun. But when the ice cream truck drove on, George forgot all about staying out of trouble and went to go find some fun of his own. In the living room, George found noisemakers and hats and games. Could this be part of the surprise? George was curious. But before George could find out, he found streamers and balloons and colored tissue. George couldn't resist. He took the living room and, wow! Decorating was easy for a little monkey. Look, he made the chair into a zebra and the couch into a big kitty cat, and he wound streamers around the tree to make it a snake. Still, George was curious about the surprise, and what was that good smell coming from the kitchen? George followed his nose. The smell was, it was a cake, and it looked as good as it smelled. All it needed was frosting. George had seen his friend make frosting before, but today his friend was busy. Maybe George could help. He could frost the cake himself. First, George put a bit of this into the mixer, and then he added a bit of that, and then he turned the mixer on, and the delicious pink frosting whirled around and around and around. But it was whirling too fast. But when George tried to stop the mixer, it went faster. And faster. And faster. Oh no! George lifted the beaters out of the mixer, and pink frosting flew everywhere. Look at all that pink frosting. Oh no. Poor George. He didn't mean to make such a mess. He only wanted to help. Now, how could he ever clean up this sticky kitchen? But then, outside, George heard the tinkly music again. It was the ice cream truck coming back up the hill. George had an idea. Quickly, he opened up the door and invited in all of the neighborhood dogs for a treat. In no time at all, the dogs ran in and licked up the frosting, and the kitchen was as clean as a whistle. When the dogs finished their snack, George took them back outside. The ice cream truck was still there, and George's friend was there too. Look at George, he's still covered in ice cream. "George," said the man with the yellow hat, "I've been looking all over for you. It's time for your surprise." Let's see, George had found games, decorations, and a cake. Could the surprise be a party? Look at the dogs licking the frosting off of George. Could the surprise be a party? It was a party! Wow! Look at the party. George was happy to see all of his friends, and they were glad to see George too. "What great decorations," Bill said. "What a lot of presents," Betsy said. "Why don't you play some games with the guests, George?" said the man with the yellow hat. "I have one more thing to do." When the man with the yellow hat came back, he was carrying a cake covered with, that's right, candles. This wasn't just any party. It was a birthday party. But George was still curious. Whose birthday was it? He watched to see who would blow out the candles. Then the man with the yellow hat put the cake down right in front of George. That was a surprise. It was George's birthday. The party was for him. Everybody sang "Happy Birthday." "Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Curious George. Happy birthday to you." Yay! Then George took a deep breath, blew out the candles, and made a wish. Happy birthday, Curious George.